A native New Yorker and captivating storyteller with a flair for embellishment, Jennifer Irwin currently resides in Los Angeles with two cats, a dog, and her boyfriend. After earning her BA in cinema from Denison University, she worked in advertising and marketing, raised three boys, and ultimately became a certified Pilates instructor. While she has written screenplays and short stories since her college days, Address the Color of the Sky is her first novel. Jennifer Irwin, welcome to the Games and Writers Show.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be on your show.
So you've written a book called Address the Color of the Sky, which is about a woman struggling with sex addiction. But before we get into that, what's the source of your book's title? It's lovely.
Oh, thank you. I absolutely love the title. It comes from the fairy tale Donkey Skin. And in the fairy tale, a king is on his wife's deathbed. She says, "You can only marry someone fairer than me." And that would be his daughter, the princess. And it's like she doesn't want to marry her dad. And it goes on to say she goes to a fairy, like nymph type person who says, have him make you address the color of the sky. He'll never be able to do it, and then you'll be free. And of course, he does. So then it goes on. But I refer to the fairy tale in my book. So when you read it, surprisingly, men are loving my book, which I did not expect at all.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me at all. I have a couple of questions about that, actually. But it's interesting when you tie the title with the tale, the fairy tale. And you have a couple other books coming out, right, in a trilogy. And do each of the titles in the trilogy also take their titles from that fairy tale as well?
I just submitted the second book to my agent, actually.
Oh, exciting.
Yesterday. So, it was
Congratulations.
A very exciting moment for me. Thank you. It's called Address the Color of the Moon. And then the third book will be Address the Color of the Sun. So, it's going to be all from the fairy tale.
Awesome. Fantastic. So as I mentioned, the book tells the story of a woman struggling with sex addiction. And I did find that interesting because it does seem to be like there's this sense in our culture that, I don't know, that women should be the perfect ones and that the men are the flawed ones, so much so that it kind of sometimes seems like they get a pass, whole boys will be boys kind of thing.
Well, the guy that ends up being kind of, having a lot of sex is just a stud.
Right.
And the women tend to be, she was really promiscuous. She's loose. She's this. She's that. So,
right.
But the point of my book is how your childhood ties into a lot of what you bring to relationships as an adult. And then my book goes back and forth in time, so you can see how Prudence's childhood shaped and molded who she is as a person, and that made her marry the wrong person and end up starving for love and becoming a sex addict.
I think that's an important subject to touch on. I think your book is very timely, and I think that you're aware of that as well, just based on some of the feedback you've gotten. So mad props to you for that. But it's interesting how in the book you have your character at the beginning doing a lot of kind of shocking things, and where your readers are like, I'm not sure I can get behind this, but the way you lay it out throughout the book, if the reader sticks with it, you see her, I hate to use the word journey because it's kind of overused, but that's kind of what it is, her path to coming to grips with all of that. And it really makes her exceptionally human. And that was a key element in your book. The characterization was really well done.
Oh, thank you so much. That means a lot to me. I actually wanted to create a flawed protagonist and somehow figure out a way for characters to root. For the readers to root for the character, even though she's poorly behaved. And really, a lot of people are turned off by the first scene, and the book opens in sort of a gnarly way. Yeah. And to be honest with you, I was told to do that by a literary agent that I had sent a manuscript to. So a lot of the best advice that I got was when I was querying agents, and if they didn't pick me up and they ended up giving me input and saying, it's not right for me, but why don't you try this? And the hook, just to pull readers in. But at the same time, it can turn people off because she's having sex with a complete stranger on an airplane in the bathroom, which is kind of gross. And, airplane bathrooms they're not exactly the nicest place in the world.
You can light all the candles you want in there. It's not going to be romantic. Not that I have tried it. I would like to point out that I would imagine.
I wanted to open the book that way, but to show her desperation, to show her state, and she's on her way to rehab. So, I mean, she's really in a bad space. She's in a really bad way. And I did get lucky with the timing. You're right. I was writing the book and just about to publish it when Kelly Oxford tweeted her sexual assault story and asked other people to tweet theirs. And it was just unbelievable. The response, millions of women responded. Someone tweeted every second. And I was just astounded by how many women have been just endured some form of a sexual assault. And I mean, it could be minor, major. It doesn't even, what matters is how it affected you. That's what I learned through research in this book and through writing this book. Some people have these really strong spirits and can handle really traumatizing things. And somebody else might have something sort of small happen, but it really hurt them and messed with them in such a traumatic way that it changed their life. So it's just been such a fascinating process for me. I never expected to get the kind of reviews this book has pulled in. I mean, it's just been it's been amazing. And I got a message as I was waiting for this call from a guy on Facebook Messenger saying, I just posted a review for you. And the one before that was from a guy, and the one before that was also a man. So I'm just going, why are all these men loving the book? And I got a cute post from some guy saying he bought it for his girlfriend. And then he goes, but the problem is I started reading it. Now I can't put it down. And he sent a picture of my book by a creek. He's like, I had to disappear because I was afraid to try and take the book back.
Yeah. There's something there. And I think I know kind of what it is about your book that is so appealing to like across demographics is that it's not so much the subject matter, although you handle that well, but it's how you present, again, those characters, because we're at a place now, I think, in literature, since that's what we're talking about, where back in the day, you could not, the anti-hero was not something that was done. Like there had to be a very clear demarcation between good and bad, kind of like in the old movies where the good characters were all dressed in white and the bad characters all, and everybody had to get their comeuppance. Nobody could get away with crime. I mean, just very, very rigid. But we're at a place now where we're kind of really moving away from that and focusing on the anti-hero. And I think it's important because it gives us a deeper insight into the workings of the human condition. Whereas, people do things for reasons, and it's not necessarily just because they're bad people. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, yeah, good people. Well, one of the things I address in the book is bad behavior doesn't make you a bad person.
Right. Yeah.
You just have done bad things. You have bad behavior. You can change your behavior and redeem yourself. I've been very fascinated by how Reese Witherspoon has changed Hollywood and the book world by looking for books that have flawed female protagonists who are likable or unlikable, but who are free thinkers and cutting edge and doing real things and thinking real thoughts and highly flawed. And that has just been very exciting for me. And I think it's probably going to be very exciting as she starts to make more and more movies because she's buying the film rights to a lot of books. And so that it's a great time to be in this sort of industry. And I'm excited by it. And I'm one of the things that's been very interesting to me is so many women told me they related to Prudence Aldrich, and that surprised them. Because she's a sex addict. And they're like, well, I'm relating to a sex addict. So is that a problem?
How do you account for that? What do you think the draw is?
Just what you were talking about, which I love that you brought up and just means a lot to me. You talked about the human condition. We all want to be seen. We all want to be heard. We all want love. We all need certain things to survive as human beings. And that is what I discuss in the book. That is everything about what the book is. The whole story is about, because Prudence is so broken, but those around her uplift her and help her to heal. And I think in general, people are good. People want to help other people and see the good in people. And that's what I've seen through the story, that people see Prudence as a real person, as somebody who they relate to and find empathy for. So it's just been really, really interesting. And I was extremely broken when I wrote the book and was beginning to write the book, and I wanted to heal myself. So I spilled a lot of my own guts onto the computer, and it's been very refreshing to have it turn out that people find it relatable and have, like I said, it's gotten rave reviews. I've won 7 awards for the book.
That's amazing.
So that's fun.
Well, you can definitely go ahead.
So
I'm sorry.
I have a literary agent now, so I feel like super
fantastic. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Well, I can definitely tell that you put a lot of yourself into the book. And it was interesting because a lot of writers do use writing, myself included, as a form of catharsis, a way of dealing with stress and their own struggles. So it sounds like you definitely had your own struggles. Did this book provide you with an outlet for that?
Yeah, I started writing the book when I was going through a divorce, and I felt like a failure, and I wanted to know sort of why did I choose the wrong person. And also my dad had been an alcoholic and drug addict, and I had married an alcoholic, and I figured there must have been a correlation there. Maybe I was codependent, or maybe I thought, I can cure him, or I can help him, or I can control the drinking. There's just all those things that we don't really know we're doing wrong because we're not healed from our childhood. Right. So I did a lot of research. I think addiction touches many, many lives. It doesn't even necessarily have to be yourself, but we know somebody, or we have a friend who has a family member. It's just, you see it on the news every day now. So it's a problem in our country. And what I tried to do was to take what the rehab experience is and demystify it, for one thing, and also take away a lot of the ideation. Is that the right word? Ideations of what it is like. It's not as freaky and weird as I think a lot of people think it is.
Right.
And I go into a lot of detail about what happens in rehab. And I think that's been interesting for people. And one of my favorite questions from my readers is, do you like the childhood more, or do you like the rehab scenes more? And it's pretty much split down the middle when I ask readers.
Well, I think your book is important for a number of reasons. But one of them is helping to remove the stigma from these situations, because a lot of I think part of the reason, and I'm certainly not an expert, you've done more research on this than I have, so you can confirm or deny, but it seems to me that part of the reason, at least, that people do not seek treatment, some people, is that there is such a stigma attached to it, and that by seeking treatment, you're actually assuming quite a burden.
Yeah. I endured a lot of childhood trauma, and I knew that if I didn't heal from my childhood trauma, that I was going to be damaged, and I was going to bring that to any relationship that I had in the future. So, and I think other people can relate to that. I don't think it's fun to criticize your parents. I'm a parent, so I know I've done my damage. I mean, nobody's perfect. We can't be, we're only human. Right. So I think we do the best we can, but it's good to just kind of heal from things that happen that maybe bothered you, or experiences that you've had, and move forward so that these triggers are not toxic in your next relationships as an adult. And also to find self-love and to understand, things that happen, why they happened. Maybe you were an innocent child. Maybe you were date raped. There's just a lot of things that happen that can really change a person. And I just wanted to write a book to let people know you can heal and you can move forward and find a place of self-love and have healthy relationships.
Yeah. Well, if that was your goal, you sure as hell did that. So congratulations on that. So you clearly did. And we mentioned this, did a lot of research. Can you describe a little bit about your process of research and what went into that whole journey yourself of learning about it?
Well, it was basically at the time that I was writing the book, I had a child that went through a treatment program. Mm-hmm. And so I could not have a meal with him without another person from his sober living house being present. And so I got to interview. First of all, I saw his whole process and how that happened and how that went down. And then I experienced his sober living house and talked to everyone in the house and what was their stories. I also had access to a sex addiction specialist who runs a treatment center in Beverly Hills. I read all of the books about sex addiction. I also read Facing Codependence by P.M. Melody. I attended AA meetings, SAA meetings, any open meetings that I could go to. And then I also did a lot of my own therapy. I did a long weekend retreat through the Meadows, which is basically what I based the treatment on at Serenity Hills, the imaginary. As a matter of fact, a mom came up to me recently and said, "Oh, one of my kids went to Serenity Hill or went to the Meadows." That's how I know what you were talking about in the book. And I do refer to that in the credits. So I went to a weekend trauma program, childhood trauma retreat through the Meadows, and that really helped me to understand how they look at feelings and the feelings charts. And then again, I told you my dad was a sex addict, a drug addict, so I put him in rehab when I was in college. So I got to experience that and go to Family Week and experience as a family member what it's like. So I was able to write that as well because there's a huge chapter in the book about Family Week when Prudence, her brother and her best friend and her husband come and visit her in rehab. So.
Yeah, there's somebody said, and I don't remember who it was, so I can't credit them, but somebody was saying that people who have dealt with very traumatic things, particularly in their upbringing in childhood, because that's such a the formative time, that you can either let those experiences destroy you or you can use them to become stronger, but there's not a lot of middle ground. Do you agree with that?
I do. And I'm absolutely fascinated by the resilience of the human spirit and how strong we are and how we're able to bounce back from things. But at the same time, some people aren't strong and some people don't bounce back and are not able to process things. And I don't know why that is or whether it's a chemical thing in your brain. I had a really traumatizing childhood and I was able to kind of move forward. And there's some things in the book that really happened to me. And it's probably some of like the more horrific things in the book. And I don't know how I got through it, but I was able to just understand I was just a kid. I didn't have, it was just something that happened that I didn't have any control over. And that's where your mind gets bent in childhood stuff is because you kind of, now that we're adults, we think, oh, well, why didn't I do this? But we don't know because we're kids.
Right.
And I really go over that a lot in the book because you have to just understand an innocent child cannot always defend themselves the way an adult can. And it's just a different situation. But I also wanted to address, I am the mother of three sons, I have three boys and they're in the college age and older. And the date rapes that are going on campuses are very troubling to me. And I wanted to know where we're going wrong in our society. Like, why is this happening? So I sort of used my book as a venue to talk about things that are uncomfortable to talk about, which was kind of fun for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that, a lot of, victims of abuse that I've talked to have really struggled with blaming themselves for what happened to them. And I think people who haven't gone through that have a difficult time understanding why they would do that. Do you think it has something to do with what you mentioned, like thinking back as they were a child and wonder, well, why didn't I do something? If I didn't do something to stop it, maybe I was partly to blame.
I think that as as we grow older and our brains are working a different way, we try to process what happened, but you really can't because a child doesn't think the same way. Their brains are in a different mode at that point. And I address a lot of that in the book because the small, like I said, abuse comes in so many forms, and it could be the most minor things. I mean, I've heard crazy things, but they're not, you think, Uncle Don wanted to smell my bicycle seat. Okay. So I heard that. My uncle always wanted to smell my bicycle seat. Now, is that abuse? It's troubling. It's weird, but that really traumatized this person who was an adult and shared that with me. I probably wouldn't have, I would have brushed that off as a kid because that was probably more normal for me. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Your levels of endurance, your levels of being able to like tolerate things get higher the more you see and the more you have to deal with. I love books like Running with Scissors and Angela's Ashes, books that are about getting over these horrific childhoods, and then people rise up to do things like write crazy good books, and lead normal lives. So, right. And what's normal? What is the word normal? So
right.
That's
exactly. Now, you've mentioned before that Angela's Ashes is maybe your favorite book, at least back in the day. Is it still your favorite book, or has that been displaced by others?
It's really up there, and I always say a book touches you, and depending on where you are in your life when you read it.
Yes.
And I read it at I was pregnant with my third son. I was kind of in a bad space, and I was at my brother's beach house, and he's very nurturing to me. And my mom was dead, so my brother was sort of like my parent, and I just felt like I could hunker down with a book, and I just sobbed through that. I really did. I cried through that book, and it just made me feel so empowered to know I wasn't alone, that someone else had been through something really, really awful like that, and then written a book and been, being able to tell the story. And I guess it just was really, and Glass Castle that recently came out and was made into a movie is another crazy childhood story, and it just, I think it's hard to talk about. It's hard for people to talk about. And I want to kind of open those doors and just say, we've all been through our shit. It doesn't mean we're criticizing our parents. It doesn't mean we're telling them they're bad, because both of my parents are dead. So I feel, I loved them both, and they did the best they could, and they were not bad people. And they were really, really inspiring to me in so many ways. And like I said, they weren't perfect. And believe me, I'm not perfect either. So we just all do the best we can in life. But you're not alone, and you can heal, and you can move forward. I had a male book blogger who I really admire, who sent me a private email and said, I'm not going to share this with everyone, but your book resonated with me in so many ways, and I'm still healing from my childhood. And it's just been very touching how many people have shared their stories with me. It's just been unbelievable. So, I mean, just so many good things have come from this. It's been hard because I published indie, so I haven't been able to really get the book out to market the way I wish I could. And I'm a one-man marketing machine, but I can only do so much. So that's been a little frustrating. And I pray that my next book gets picked up so that this book will actually get on a radar and be out there,
Well, I think, since the books are going to be connected, if you can get one, then I definitely think we'll be seeing more of you for sure. Was this a difficult book to write?
It was very, very difficult for me to write, and at the same time cathartic. I still can't read it without crying in certain scenes. And it's weird because I was going through so much when I was writing the book. And now when I go back and read certain parts of it, I just remember the state I was in and why I was feeling that way and why did I write these things. And the friendship that I built for Prudence and Lily is something that women just love. And friendship is something so important to people. And it helps us thrive as human beings to feel we're part of a group, and we have like camaraderie with people. And so I built this friendship that's just really solid, and it's not perfect, and there are a lot of flaws to it, and I continue on with that in the next book, and the complexities of female friendships and how they ebb and flow, and how vulnerable they can be, and how women can be real backstabbers. There's just so much there, there's just so much there. But yeah.
Yeah, I think you touched on something that related to something we were talking about earlier, which is the cathartic properties of writing. And you talked about how painful it was for you to write it, and then to relive it when reading it has a similar effect. And there's a principle in therapy where it's, you sit with the pain.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we do as writers when we are writing very personal things, in particular, where we are forcing ourselves to dig down and sit with the pain long enough to understand what the hell it is. Because a lot of people, I think, when they have had those traumatic things, they experience the pain without really understanding the nature of the beast.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel kind of, I'm a huge fan of Ernest Hemingway, and I just love how he talks about writing, and just how you bleed, and how you just get all these feelings out. And I definitely had that experience when I was writing this book. I had my whole family involved with it, and I remember one night when I was decided that I don't want to do any spoilers, but one of the characters dies in rehab, commits suicide, and my whole family was like, "What? No, you can't. Why her?" And I was just like, "I don't know. She's got to go."
Right. Oh, the writer's play.
Emotionally attached they were to these characters, So it's just kind of, it's been fun. I've had so much amazing support, and the indie author community. There's been a lot of lows. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I have days where I'm just like bawling, crying, like, "Oh my gosh, I just need a break," But everybody has that, right? We all need that. And then I have days where I'm like, "Wow, I can do this. Like, it's going to be okay." And I actually just got a message because I signed a release agreement with CAA for the book for them to look for producers. And I just got a message, a screenshot of an email from CAA that went to my agent. So things are moving along. I'm kind of excited, but it doesn't move fast. It's not going to be overnight. But, it's baby steps. It's just baby steps.
Absolutely. So I'm just glad to hear that you're a Hemingway fan. I don't know if you can. These two shelves are
they really?
These are books by Hemingway, and then the shelf below you can't see are like biographies and memoirs of about him, and by people who were in his inner circle and whatnot.
I actually had someone tell me I wrote like Hemingway, and I was like, "This is the hugest compliment I've ever had in my entire life." My dream is to go to Cuba and see that house where he wrote.
That'd be amazing.
I mean, just stand there and look at it,
That'd be awesome.
Hopefully someday.
Well, where can people find you online to learn more about what you're doing and keep up with your progress?
Everything for me is Jennifer Irwin, author.
Okay.
It's either Jen Irwin, author, or Jennifer Irwin, author. So my Instagram, my Facebook, my Twitter, my LinkedIn, and my website. It's all Jennifer Irwin, author.
Awesome. You made it easy for us.
And then I'm on Amazon at this point. I mean, you can buy the book online anywhere, Barnes and Noble, just anywhere, but you can't go into the brick and mortars and buy it. So, because I published indie.
That's another plight of the indie author. I know it well. Yes.
I can't get in there. They don't let us in. I'm knocking at the door. Come on, let me in.
Well, there are some pitfalls there too, I will tell you.
I know. I'm not going to be able to say indie author anymore after I get picked up by a big publisher.
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of positives to the indie community, but I don't know very many who, if they were offered a traditional contract, wouldn't take it. So.
I know, right?
Awesome. Well, Jennifer Irwin, thanks so much for coming on the Games and Writers Show. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. This was actually a really fun interview, and I appreciate your time. So thanks for having me.